Good morning once again, and I'm glad to welcome each and every one of you to the 5th week of the masterclass session of the SDGs Advocate Programme. And I believe it's been a wonderful time indeed since the inception of this program. I really want to congratulate each and every one making it up to the 5th phase of the 5th session of the masterclass training. And how is the weather over there? How is across the various states in Nigeria? I hope you guys are doing great. So right away, we'll be starting with the fourth session for today. Definitely we'll be having 2 sessions today, yeah. And the design of the program is for us to have 2 sessions for each masterclass. And the fourth session will be handled by a renowned expert, and these are mentors of SDGs. You know, when you talk about sustainable development goals, if you want to learn further, aside what you see on EDEX or SDG Academy, when people to have on the call in person of Dr. Bala. Dr. Bala is the Senior Technical Advisor, the Office of the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Sustainable Development Goals. And he will be handling the session Advancing Sustainable Development through Governance and Partnership. I knew that many weeks back, some of us were asking questions that has to do with governance and the role of governance in SDGs, and things that has to do with partnership. Go 17, yeah, go 16, go 17. Yeah, definitely today's session is going to enlighten each and every one of us better as in this regards. I believe you've taken your notepad, maybe your pen and jot, or maybe you are using your pad or phone or device to drop those salient points. And with me on behalf of SDSN Nigeria, we are glad to welcome you, Doctor. Thank you for taking time to be part of today's masterclass session, despite your very busy schedule, sir.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for your kind and generous words. So am I to start my session now?
Yes, sir. You can start your session, sir.
So you will enable me to share my slides?
Absolutely, sir.
Okay.
You can share your slides now, sir.
Okay. Okay. So can you see my slides now? Hello, can you see my slides now?
Yes, we can see the slides, sir.
Okay, thank you so much. A very good morning, colleagues. My name is Bala Yunusa, and I am the Senior Technical Advisor in the Office of the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Sustainable Development Goals. And today I will be just sharing some useful insights around advancing sustainable development through governance and partnership. And my presentation will start by providing some sort of background. I know you're quite familiar with some of these issues, but just by way of providing some background to this presentation, a lot of people thought it was just the world waking up to come to terms with the sustainable development, even as a concept. But we could trace the entire concept of sustainable development when it got prominence way back in 1987, to be precise, with the publication of the Brundtland report, also known as a common feature. So it was actually that report that defined sustainable development in the context that we get to today, as that development that meets the needs of present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And then recall that the world saw the implementation of the ambitious Millennium Development Goals between year 2000 and year 2015. So it was at the expiration of that world leaders came again. It is on record that about 1,519 world leaders, experts, business leaders, the academia, the civil society, all put heads together to agree to the framing of the Sustainable Development Goals the way it is today. And so the 2030 agenda envisions largely when world leaders adopted in 2015 on the margins of the United Nations General Assembly to adopt the 2030 agenda. It was basically a vision to see a future that is economically sustainable, socially inclusive, and environmentally resilient. And then that vision was expressed through the framing of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, 169 targets, and 230 key performance indicators. And then that vision today has become a universal call to action to end extreme poverty, safeguard our planet, and ensure all people enjoy peace and prosperity by the year 2030. And the way the goals are framed, they are framed to be more interrelated, interconnected, and often indivisible. So to make progress on one SDG, you will necessarily need to make progress on a different target in a different SDGs. So that is the interconnectedness of the SDGs that we often argue that there is opportunity for multiplier effects, there's opportunity for influencing SDGs, there are opportunities for even countries to prioritize few of these SDGs while also making progress across all the 17 SDGs. Just specific to Nigeria and the governance architecture for the implementation of the SDGs, once the world leaders adopted the 2030 agenda, including our own President Muhammadu Buhari GCFR in September 2015, Nigeria acted immediately in operationalizing the global goals. Of course, this is evident with the timely establishment of the Office of the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Sustainable Development Goals to provide horizontal and vertical intergovernmental planning and coordination, representation and partnership development, resource mobilization and management, and then crucially, monitoring, evaluation, and reporting for the SDGs. Our strategic approaches can be seen at two different levels, at the national and at the subnational level. So at the national level, we work with ministries, departments, and agencies to mainstream or integrate, if you like, the SDGs into the sectoral policies and plans of the ministries, departments, and agencies. And when we do that, we're not only doing planning and coordination, but we're also doing resource mobilization, because we are then asking the ministries, departments, and agencies to use their traditional budgetary sources to finance the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals, recognizing that the SDGs cannot be achieved with standalone policies and programs. They need to be carefully integrated and mainstreamed into our sectoral policies and plans. So for example, 3 to 4 arguably of the SDGs fall within the mandate of the Federal Minister of Environment. So it is the Minister of Environment that should operationalize the SDGs, because that is where the implementation capacity resides. The same with the Ministry of Health and Education. Health should concentrate largely on SDG 3. Of course, it's within its mandate, some component of SDG 2 on nutrition, and then some component of SDG 6 on water, sanitation, and hygiene. So that is the sort of integration that we hope. And then at the subnational level, recognizing we run a federal system with the federal government and then 36 states and the 774 local governments, This is by no means a huge implementation context for the 2030 agenda. So we work closely with the 36 states to make sure that they embed and mainstream the SDGs into their medium and long-term development policies and plans. And that is the strategic approach. So let me not take too much of your time. So by way of institutionalizing the SDGs and Nigeria's commitment, once the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the SDGs were adopted in 2015, we recognized that there was history to that, because the world saw the implementation of the Millennium Development Goals between year 2000 and year 2015. And Nigeria was part of that global commitment. And Nigeria, even though implementation started like in most other countries, a bit late, and I think Nigeria started implementing the MDGs during the 2006 fiscal year. So it's like 5 years into the Millennium Declaration. So, so we needed to build on that existing foundation. And so we did a country transition strategy from Millennium Development Goals to Sustainable Development Goals, learning from the implementation progress and challenges of the MDGs, and then taking that experience into the SDG era. But more importantly, it is the way we faced the implementation of the SDGs in Nigeria, looking at the first phase of building on existing foundations and advocacy sensitization around the global goals between year 2016 being the effective period of the implementation until 2020. And then we hope to scale up implementation between year 2001 and year 2015, believing that by the first phase, all the institutional frameworks would have been in place, and also the sensitization advocacy would have been completed. And then the second phase will enable us to scale up implementation, both at the national and at the subnational level. And then final phase of it will be more likely of repeating, accelerating, successes and fast tracking the achievement of the 2030 agenda and the SDGs between year 2026 to 2030, so that no Nigerian will be left behind. When we learned from the institutionalizing the SDGs, we learned from the mistake of the Millennium Development Goals era. As most of you are quite familiar, we just get to hear some sweeping statements from time to time that Nigeria and any other country did not achieve the SDGs or MDGs or failed to achieve the MDGs. And that begs for the question, which of the MDGs and what was the baseline and what was the end time result? All of this, it was because the Millennium Development Goals actually challenged most countries because of the data issue. Most countries started the implementation 5-6 years into the adoption of the MDGs. And there was no baseline largely for the MDGs. And therefore, by 2015, measuring impact became somewhat tricky because you didn't know your starting point. It's not scientific for you to have a end time and rigorous impact measurement. In Nigeria, I've mentioned that implementation actually started in 2006 fiscal year. That's like 5 years into the Millennium Declaration. So there was no baseline. So to avoid that mistake, the part of the learning is from the MDG era was to quickly do an SDG baseline indicators mapping. And we did that in partnership with the National Bureau of Statistics, because that is the office with the mandate for official statistics. So we work closely with them to conduct SDG baselines survey, and this report is still online, and we still have some hard copies. Way back in 2016, we did this to make sure that we know our starting point and that we are able to track progress all the way to 2030. That led us to identification of gaps in the indicators of the SDGs across our periodic survey instruments, as well as the what we call the system of administrative statistics. which I will explain further in a few slides to come. So that led us to developing a national SDG data dictionary. What that does is between SDG 1 to 17, target 1 to 169, and indicator 1 to 230, we mapped it out, defined it within the Nigerian statistical system context, and more importantly, identifying which ministry, department, or agency is responsible for which indicator and which target. So for example, this is just a snapshot of SDG 1. You could see as from SDG 1, target 1.1, indicator 1.1.1, which ministry, department, and agency is responsible for that is the National Bureau of Statistics. Which data production activities will deliver on this indicator and target is the National or Nigeria Living Standard Survey, and the frequency of the survey or the instrument every five years. So this is what we did as part of the realignment of the national statistical system with the requirements and indicators of the SDGs. So we know which ministry, department, and agency will be reporting. And to strengthen the statistical system, we had to develop the data supply and responsibility framework, otherwise known as data bond. So we signed the National Bureau of Statistics, the Statistician General of the Federation had to sign a data bond with the heads of ministries, department, and agencies, agreeing and committing themselves to, collecting and reporting on those indicators to the National Bureau of Statistics. And the same with the 36 states Statistician General, because they are part of the National Statistical System. And then by last year, we successfully realigned our national statistical system with the requirements and indicators of the SDGs. And Nigeria now becomes the first African country to have successfully realigned its national statistical system with the requirements and indicators of the SDGs. And what this means is that on an annual basis, through our own national statistical system, we'll be able to track progress otherwise in the implementation of the SDGs across the 230 key performance indicators. And by way of composition of the SDG indicators, you will see about 70% of the 230 indicators will be coming from the system of administrative statistics, which is quite cheap, is cost effective, because this is the periodic running of the ministries, department, and agencies, and that is good. About 23% will be coming from the surveys and the censuses that happens periodically, like the Living Standard Survey, the National Population Census, Demographic Health Survey, the Multiple Indicator Cluster Survey. So all of this, about 25% will come from that, and just about 9% will be computed or derived indicators. And this means that the National Bureau of Statistics will compute on these indicators. Then we can quickly look at the integration of the national, if you like, the SDGs into our national development policies and plans. And this is what we always advocate, that the SDGs cannot be achieved with standalone policies and programs. They must be carefully and scientifically integrated into medium and long-term development plan. So by way of summary, since 2016, the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, ERGP 2017 to 2020, the Economic Sustainability Plan of 2020 following COVID-19 pandemic, and the National Poverty Reduction with Growth Strategy of 2021, and now the new medium-term national development plan have all been inspired by the SDGs and the cardinal objectives of this administration, notably the economy, security, fight against corruption, as well as lifting 100 million Nigerians out of poverty during the decade of action for the global goals. So this is what we've also been able to do in institutionalizing the SDGs. We have a scientific instrument that enables us to do SDG-based development planning at the hello. Hello? Emmanuel, can you hear me? Hello, can you confirm you can hear me? Hello, Emmanuel, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
Oh, okay, sorry, something happened on my side. Okay, so we have the ISDG model that enables us to do scientific SDG-based costing and planning. So we use this to guide our macroeconomic framework of all the national and subnational development plans. I've mentioned that we're supporting the 36 states to do SDG-based development planning. So we use this ISDG model, and the report was launched, I think, on the margins of the 74th session of the General Assembly in 2019. So that is it. Also want to highlight that Nigeria, once the world leaders adopted the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, they set up a follow-up and review mechanism, which we now know as the High-Level Political Forum. It is a forum where world leaders meet every July under the auspices of the United Nations Economic and Social Council, ECOSOC, to review progress across the countries. And way back in 2017, Nigeria presented its first voluntary national review on the implementation of the SDGs. And as you could imagine, it was just a year into the implementation. The reports highlighted the institutional and regulatory frameworks that have been put in place to enable effective implementation of the SDGs, and some of the programs that could facilitate and fast track the achievement of the SDGs, such as the National Social Investment Programs, were all highlighted in that report. And in 2020, we presented our second voluntary national review to the High-Level Political Forum. And this time around, we did an evidence-based voluntary national review, synthesizing a specific evaluation evidence across the 7 reporting SDGs for the 2020 VNR. And we have signified intention and commitment to present our third voluntary national review next July, God willing. Basically, despite the fact that we are coordinating the implementation of the SDGs as part of our mandate for resource mobilization and management, we are able to implement a number of key interventions across the priority SDGs so as to fast track the achievement of the SDGs in Nigeria, and a number of interventions across healthcare service provision, education, provisioning, water and sanitation have all been implemented across, the 6 geopolitical zones in Nigeria. Obviously, SDG 17 talks about partnerships and the means of implementing the SDGs, and that is where, if you like, that is the central or the cardinal SDG, if you like. Without the resources, without the frameworks, without the partnerships, we cannot deliver the SDGs. Indeed, the 5 pillars of sustainable development, one of the 5 P's is actually partnerships, apart from the people, the planet, prosperity, peace, and then the 5th one is the partnerships. And we need the partnerships to we cannot deliver this. So recognizing this and building on both national, global, levels partnerships are important. The SDG has been working since 2016 to establish all the strategic platforms that will guarantee effective implementation of the SDGs. And in this context, we have the Presidential Council on the SDGs, led by the President of the Federal Republic himself, some cabinet ministers, some state governors from the 6 geopolitical zones are all supposed to be meeting quarterly to provide guidance and leadership for this. Then we have the Donors Partnership Forum, we have the Organized Private Sector Advisory Group on SDGs, we have the Civil Society Strategy Group on SDGs, We have the standing committees in the National Assembly, both the Senate and the House of Representatives. And all of these strategic platforms are aimed to mobilize expertise and resources in support of the achievement of the SDGs in Nigeria. So these are sort of the the institutional frameworks that we have put in place, in addition to the integrated national financing framework that we have just launched on the margins of the 77th session. So I've mentioned about the support to the states on SDG-based development planning. These are the catalog of the states. Actually, the states that have launched now become 3, because this week, Tuesday to be precise, Ekiti State has joined the ones that have successfully launched the report. And then we are working with all others at different stages of the planning process. We are also trying to institutionalize the SDGs. We conducted independent country-led evaluation of SDG 3 and 4. This is with technical support from the United Nations Children's Fund. This is trying to, as part of our follow-up and review mechanism for voluntary national reviews, and also discharging our mandate of monitoring, evaluation, and reporting to double check the implementation after 4 to 5 years of implementation. Where do we stand? What are the challenges? And then how do we strengthen implementation going forward? I will be doing this across the priority SDGs as resources permit. And then this is also an initiative that Nigeria is now the first in the Global South to have successfully conducted 2 independent country evaluation of the priority SDGs, and the reports were launched on just last August by the Vice President of the Federal Republic. And then this one just last month, on the margins of the General Assembly, we have launched or completed the design of the Nigeria's integrated national financing framework for the sustainable development. This is part of Nigeria's commitment to the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, the Addis Ababa Action Agenda for Financing Development, as well as the Africa's Union Agenda 2063, the Africa we want. The INFF framework actually is designed to map out the entire financing landscape to recognize the funding and the financing options that will finance the sustainable development. And this has always been our argument, that there is need to shift from funding sustainable development to financing sustainable development, because funding is hardly adequate and sustainable, but financing is sustainable. This is where we normally argue that for the size of the Nigerian economy, with a GDP of approximately $407 billion, you have the size of the public sector at around $60 billion. The entire budget of the Federation in 2022 is about 27 trillion naira, and that is about 17.1 for the federal government, and then the 36 states combined about 10 trillion naira. So that's about $60 billion today, and in relation to the GDP size of 407 billion. So we need to move away towards that. Like I said, a number of initiatives here and there. So we have the SDG Innovation and Knowledge Hubs. So this decentralized, if you like, system. You know, we have the similar institutional structure across the 36 states in Nigeria. In all the states, we have either the office of the senior special assistant to the governor on SDGs, or special advisor to the governor on SDGs, whatever nomenclature apply. That is our vertical structure. And so across the 36 states, we have the 6 geopolitical zones. We have a state in each of the zones who are hosting the SDG Knowledge and Innovation Hub. For the Southwest, we have Lagos. For the Southeast, we have Enugu. For the South-South, we have Delta. For the North-Central, we have Nasarawa. For the Northeast, we have Gombe. And for the Northwest, we have Sokoto. So these are some, if you like, the decentralized system that we hope. They are all under design. The design process has been completed. Just now, the implementation and the launch of the hubs will enable us to decentralize our SDG advocacy, knowledge sharing, and all of that. We hosted in March this year about 26 African countries, where we did capacity building workshop on Africa's voluntary national reviews, and it was a huge success too. Establishing the FEBL consortium in partnership with the Sustainable Development Solution Network, Nigeria. We just held a high-level dialogue on the FEBL consortium, and then we hope to swing into action with the implementation anytime soon. We've done the last 5 years was about advocacy and sensitization. We have the commission, the SDG ambassadors. These are thought leaders, celebrities, that are all working within their own space to promote the gospel of the SDGs. We also recognize the importance of our educated youths, and so through our strategic partnership with the National Youth Service Corps, we have established the NYSC SDG Champion since 2017, where we catch the corps members as early as when they arrive at the NYSC orientation camp. We sensitize them, and then we set up the SDG clubs. And then when they move to places of primary assignment, they are also able to spread the gospel of the SDGs, and more importantly, give us some feedback if they are in a community where there is no primary school, no water point, no health facility, and then they give us feedback. And then with modest resources, we could easily intervene to help fast track the achievement of the SDGs for those excluded parts of our society. As part of also our advocacy, we have translated the SDGs, 17 of them, and the 169 targets into the 3 major Nigerian languages, Hausa, Yoruba, and Igbo, estimated to be spoken by about 140 million Nigerians. We've also mass-produced a students' edition of the Global Goals for Sustainable Development across all public schools across the 36 states and the FCT. COVID came just as we began the decade of action, something that started as a health hazard, later transformed into a socio-economic challenge, challenging the prospect of achieving the SDGs. As part of also our intervention, we had to procure and distribute intensive care ambulances, some personal protective equipment, and then also worked hard with all the relevant ministries, departments, and agencies on advocacy and sensitization around the pandemic. We have carefully enumerated activities for the decade of action. Most of this, today, we have all achieved that. We have developed a coherent SDG implementation plan from 2020 to 2030. We have successfully realigned the national statistical system. We've also consciously used the Nigeria SDG model to develop our national development plan, and we're using it to support the subnational governments as well. We have developed the integrated national financing framework. Now we are working with both state and non-state actors to strengthen advocacy around the global goals in the years and weeks to come. Just like to conclude by arguing that Nigerian government has demonstrated strong commitment in the overall implementation of the SDGs. Institutional frameworks have been established at the national and at the subnational level to support and guarantee effective implementation of the SDGs. Like I've also mentioned, we have recognized that the SDGs cannot be achieved with standalone policies and programs. They have to be carefully and scientifically integrated into our national and subnational policies and development plans. The importance of monitoring, evaluation, and reporting cannot be overemphasized, and that is why we had to even take a global South leadership in conducting a country-led independent evaluation. We also recognize that dwindling financial resources. Recall that Nigeria was twice in recession between 2016 and date. We had a COVID pandemic challenging the prospects and also diverting development resources towards fighting COVID pandemic. We also recognize that there are pockets of insecurity across the country, and all of this must have combined to slow down progress in our desire to implement the SDGs. But we also strongly believe that with all of us working together and in synergy with the private sector, public sector, development partners, the academia, and the civil society, in fact, as concerned citizens, we should be able to surmount this and remain on track to achieve the SDGs. I thank you very much for your time, and then thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bala, for the insightful session.
Thank you. I can say that it's been an enlightening one indeed, because there are a lot of information that we don't know about, and which is more reason that we are so happy you are in this call today, sir. There are a lot of information that people don't have knowledge about. There are a lot of structures, there are a lot of policy that has been, programs that have been in place by the Office of the Senior Special Advisor to the President on SDG affairs. And it's due for each and everyone to know about it. And just, I really love the idea when you're talking about the SDG Innovation Hub, and what you even ended the presentation with all of us working together and synergy. Yeah, we should be able to surmount and achieve the SDG towards the 2030 agenda. We have some questions from our participants on YouTube. We appreciate you kindly help us to attend to these questions. There is a question from, I will try as much as possible to rephrase some of those questions so that you can have a grasp of it, sir. There is a question from, just a minute, sir. Okay. Please, those of us are asking our question, let's try as much as possible to add a state to it. Okay, check once again. All right. During your presentation, you made mention of financing and funding. You said, I think you said funding is hardly sustainable, but financing is quite sustainable. Then there is a question from Gaba. He asked that, please, I would like to understand the difference between funding and financing of the SDGs in the context of your presentation, sir.
Okay, thank you. So let me respond. Thank you so much. It's a good question. I've always, when I make presentation, even one-on-one, people get to ask what is the difference between funding and finance. It's actually in the literal meaning of the two. So what we say in the context of funding is limited to public sector. Okay, I've given you example of the size of the public sector, about $60 billion in relation to the the size of the economy, which is about $407 billion. Okay, now private and public capital have to be deployed towards supporting sustainable development. When it is only public sector resources, it's just funding. But when it is public sector and private sector, channeling resources towards development, then it becomes financing. And obviously, you could see there are various options of financing sustainable development. Some of them are, for example, the green bond, the blue bond. Now, some countries like Mexico and Malaysia floated SDG bond. So there are other innovative financing mechanisms like the Sukuk, the diaspora bond, impact investments. All of these are financing sustainable development, and we need that, to remain on track and to fill the funding gap. We argue that recent reports argue that out of the three about $3 trillion required to finance the implementation of the SDGs in developing countries. About $2.5 trillion financing gap exists. So both public and private sector have a crucial role to play in financing sustainable development. And it is also the same report argued that insurance companies, sovereign wealth funds hold in assets about $80 trillion in assets. That even if we shift 3 to 5% of that into financing sustainable development, will make meaningful progress. And so this is that's the context, the difference. When you only talk about funding, it is largely from the public sector, both domestic and international, and it is quite small. But when it is financing, then you're deploying private, resources, in support of the achievement of the SDGs, and this could come in various forms, like I've enumerated. So that is what it is. I hope I've clarified this.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Bala. And yeah, that's very insightful, sir. And there's another question from Abbas Mohammed. I think two people asked the question. Hello, sir?
I can hear you.
Okay, sir. There's a question from Abbas Mohammed. He asked that, is there a plan for SDGs, I think he wants to say, going to embark on a vigorous campaign awareness about the SDGs that will extend to the small villages? Because it is here the message of are not reaching those that are dwelling in the rural area. Then a very similar question to that is from it's from Florence. He said, my question is, how can government schools in remote area that are lacking behind carried along, leaving no one behind?
Okay, thank you so much. Abbas and Florence, they have the same, I think there's convergence in their questions. So Abbas is about ongoing plan on advocacy and sensitization at the subnational level. When we say subnational, it is the states, it is the local government, it is the community as well. I recall that I've mentioned that we did a number of advocacy and sensitization drives during the first phase of the implementation. And some of them included, which I didn't include in my presentation, we call it family activation of the SDGs. We worked with the world's largest lesson. Some of you are aware of their work, and if you're not, you could also Google it. In 2019, we did community activation. We were in all the 774 local governments. We had youth volunteers that activated the campaign. We were in churches, we were in mosques, and we were in community centers to advocate for the global good. That should be the sort of initiative we should sustain. We even did the family activation where each family would pledge which of the SDGs do they hope to achieve by between year 2000 and year 2000, at least year 2022, which is 2-year time frame. And we had a lot of them. All the ministers, some governors have all been co-opted into that campaign by pledging, with what they will achieve. And I would encourage you to quickly Google world largest lesson, SDG activation in Nigeria 2019. Yeah. I'm sure you see some of this, the detail of what we've done. I've also told you about our partnership with the National Youth Service Corps. The corps members are in all the 774 local governments, and they are using that platform. We're using that platform to also reach the excluded communities. And I think that of Florence is also about reaching the remote areas. And so these are the issues. So while we are also doing what we're doing at the national level with the subnationals, the states and the local governments are also creating their own, sensitization and advocacy approaches. But more importantly, we are also using the civil society strategy group, where we have about 179 civil society actors operating the SDG space across the country. And they are also doing advocacy, they are also doing sensitization. So it is not only about the government. Even as individuals, we should be propagating the gospel of the SDGs, and this is the way to go. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bala. Thank you for that wonderful response. Please, we still love we attend to one or two questions before you go today, sir. I definitely know that you have some other busy engagements. But there is a question from Sandra Robert. The question is, from the Sustainable Development Report 2022, and Nigeria has decreased impact on Goal 1, 3, and 11, and no data on reduced inequalities. How are we working, or how can we work to improve on that?
Sorry, you were breaking, Emmanuel. I didn't hear the last lap of your question, which I think is the most important.
Okay, so I will ask the question again. The question is from Sandra. She said, from the Sustainable Development Report 2022, Nigeria has a decreasing impact on Goal 1, 3, and 11, and no data on reduced inequality. How can we work to improve on that?
Okay, so the way we want to improve on this is obviously we know the impact of COVID-19, we know the dwindling financial resources, and so all the ministry department, and that's why we did this one of the key essence of the independent evaluation is to find out, what is happening, what is working and what is not working. And in areas that something is happening and we're making progress, what are the success factors, and then learn from that and then replicate. So we're going to intensify our advocacy and sensitization around the key findings, but more crucially, we are filling that gap by realigning our national statistical system so that every year we should be able to track progress, because some of these reports until now, they're using proxy data to arrive at this conclusion. So we want to rely heavily on our national statistical system and cover all the 230 key performance indicators. So the lack of data on SDG 10 that he mentioned, or 11, or will be taken care of by what we have just achieved with the National Bureau of Statistics. As to the impact and challenges, it is all that we have to put our hands on deck to ensure that we remain on track to achieve these SDGs. And some of these SDGs, are not to be achieved by 2025. Some are actually to be achieved before. Some are to be achieved by the deadline of 2030. So there will be a progress in and out, but on average, it is when certain things happen in a continuous manner that we are able to get to the averages of what we want to achieve. For example, having a national social national social protection policy is one of the 230 key performance indicators, and we have achieved that this year by launching a national social policy, social protection policy. So some of these indicators, we're already ticking them. We're making progress on them, because once you do that, then that indicator would have been achieved. But there are those ones that, it is at the end, you will look at not only the end result, but also averages over time. And that is what will remain a challenge as we move in and out of this. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Bala. I know that you have another engagement shortly, but before you go, sir, there is one question which is very pertinent, and we definitely help our youth across the state, because as we speak, we have engagement across the 36 states, and as well the FCT, whereby we have various groups and youth groups, and what they are going to do after this masterclass session is to go on advocacy session and across the secondary school, and also some community groups in their society, identifying various problems and providing solutions to it. But there is also a need for us to, when it comes to stakeholder engagement, we believe that it's due for us to get connected with the right offices in charge of SDGs, just like you mentioned, sir. But regarding the offices in charge of SDGs in each state, I know that it's not like it doesn't exist, it exists. But is there a way we, the youth, the advocates can get to know the ministries, or they can get to know more information about that, so that people in Cross River can easily get to know those who they can contact as regards SDG related matters, and those in all of that across the 36 states? So is there a way they can easily get to know more about that? And also, you just mentioned about the SDG innovation hubs, definitely, which is going to be implemented in due course. I would also like to have sufficient information on that, sir.
Okay, so what we'll do is, my colleague Mercedes is on this call. She will liaise with us to share with you the details of the SDG Innovation Hub with you, and then you can find a way of sharing with your participants on this platform. Also, the comprehensive list of the SDG focal persons across the 36 states, the names and the offices, we will be able to share that. I don't think we will be able to share the telephone number, but we'll share the names and the address of the offices, so that you can use your discretion and share it to whoever needs that information to contact. But the SDG offices across the 36 states can easily be found. But we have a comprehensive list of the SDG focal persons and their office address. We'll get that and send to you, and then you can now find a way of sharing it discreetly to anyone that needs it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bala. Thank you for the wonderful time. Yeah, it's indeed a wonderful time with you this morning, and really want to appreciate you for taking the time to attend the session. On behalf of the leadership of SDSN Nigeria, really, we sincerely appreciate you, and also the other team member that are behind the scene and also on this call this morning. Thank you for giving this insightful. We appreciate you so much.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel, and have a good weekend.
And you too, sir. And you too, sir. Okay, dear participants, I believe it's been a wonderful session on advancing sustainable development through governance and partnership. Definitely, we are still going to be responding to some questions and comments from our participants. And please, before we move on to the next session, I will also admonish that the state representatives, you can join on the Zoom platform. Yeah, but please, if you are joining, just join with your state name and your personal name. The reason why we are giving room for you to do that is for us to have a very good interaction after the second masterclass session. And also with us this morning is a mentor. I will not just say I will not just call him a teacher or a professor, but he's a mentor, and I'll also call him the father of SDGs. So we are graced to have great people on this call this morning, indeed. And these are people that we can always learn from and gain more knowledge from, because within the last few years, I got to know Professor Lanyon. It's been a great blessing to me, indeed. And Professor Lanyon was the former director of Center for Sustainable Development, the first center that is in charge of sustainable development learning in Nigeria. He was a former director and also the dean of economics, Faculty of Economics, University of Ibadan. With great joy, we are glad to have you on this call this morning, sir. Good morning, Prof. Hello, sir. Okay. Please just let's wait a minute while I think Prof is just joining up, and definitely we have his response just in a minute. So while we have Prof on the call, please, I want each and everyone. Okay. Oh, sorry about that, sir. The host is not allowing me to unmute. Okay. All right, sir. You can unmute your mic now, sir.
Okay, I think it's working now.
Okay, good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Yes, sir. We are so glad to have you on this call. And as I've earlier mentioned, Prof is the father of SDGs in Nigeria and even outside Nigeria. He has indeed been a blessing. And I really advise each and everyone to try as much as possible to follow Prof on the social media IDs. You get to learn a lot of things. And this morning, Professor Larry Olarinwaju will be handling the session at measuring and achieving the SDGs, and definitely he has a lot of information and teachings across that as regards that. Without taking so much of the time, because I know that we have a very short time to run this session. This is what he teaches for like 3 months and even over 3 months, and we are collapsing into just a 1-hour lecture. I would like to give the room to Prof to start the teaching for today, sir. Over to you, sir. So I'm sorry, I didn't mention this earlier, sir. We have participants connecting from YouTube, and all of them are on YouTube, but we have just opened the page, the room for the state representatives to join on Zoom now, while we also continue with the lecture, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. I think I should be able to share my screen.
Yes, sir, you can do that.
That opportunity exists. Okay, thank you very much. Let me share the screen now. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, sir, we can see it.
Okay, that's perfect. Let me start by thanking everybody for the opportunity to present this. And also, I'm coming, I'm just trying to check my... How much time do I have for this presentation so that I can then try to do it that way?
1 hour, sir, but definitely we'll be having like 10 minutes for questions and answers.
Okay, thank you very much. So good morning, everybody, wherever you are. It's a pleasure to be here to be leading this discussion on achieving and measuring sustainable developments in Nigeria. I want to use this opportunity to thank very sincerely the Sustainable Development Solutions Network globally and in Nigeria for organizing this workshop and for thinking that I have something to present for people to be able to discuss. I also thank specifically The coordinator of the SDGs Nigeria, Professor Labodi, and his co-chair, Professor Ngozi Odiaka, together with the youth coordinator, Mr. Emmanuel Olowoyo, and Femi Oye. I've forgotten his name. Anyway, thank you very much for inviting me. Because now sustainable development is very important, and that's why every country wants to make sure that the citizens of that country are living in an economy, in a society that is developed. So every activity of government is always geared toward development. And as power holders, it is important that when they tell us that they are gearing the society towards development, they must be able to account for and also take responsibility for their actions. What we have always found in many countries is that or inability to account for their responsibility as well as take action. And despite the fact that these people hold political, financial, and every other form of power to govern the country. And that's why the speed of development differs from one country to the other. There is a big controversy on whether it is public aspiration that causes development or whether it's development that actually leads public aspiration. But what is important is that at the end of the day, everybody looks for development outcomes. That's the hope of everybody. That's what they want to achieve. And the realities, in many cases, is always different from what they have. So let's put it in perspective. What exactly do we mean by development? Development, by definition that I have chosen here, is from Todaro and Smith in his textbook, which says that it is a multidimensional process that involves major changes in social structures, attitudes, and institutions, as well as economic growth of the country, reduction in inequality, and eradication of absolute poverty. If you see a society that is poor, then we can say that it is devoid of development. For development does not just happen. There must be major changes in the social structure, in the attitudes, in the thinking process, in the mental mode, as well as institutions of that particular country or society. And this is different from sustainable development. Sustainable development goes beyond that because it includes issues of rights, it includes issues of intertemporal nature, and it also includes issues of inequality and the way power is structured. And that's why the most common definition of sustainable development is that it is that type of development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So if you look at the definition, you'll find out that it talks about development that makes sure that everybody that is currently existing is getting that development. But in the process of achieving the development in the present state, we must always also make sure that those that are coming behind us also have the ability to also be developed. And that's why in the 2030 agenda, which brought out the Sustainable Development Goals, it recognizes that there are basic issues that have to be in place if we are going to have sustainable development. Those are issues of poverty eradication, issue of inequality reduction, issues of preserving the planet so that we do not destroy the planet where we live. And at the end of the day, there must be sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth, as well as social inclusion. The mindset of those who framed the 2030 agenda is that all these issues are linked together and they are also interdependent. And that follows especially from the definition of sustainable development in itself, because sustainability framework rests on three tripods. And the tripods includes economic growth, it includes environmental protection, it includes social protection, also social progress. Each of these three items must be achieved together because you cannot have economic growth alone and think that society will be developed. If you have economic growth and social progress is missing, then it creates problem. If we destroy the environment, it creates problem. So for sustainability to work, economic growth, environmental protection, and social progress must all be achieved together, and that's why they are all linked in achieving the sustainable development. So we can then see sustainable development as an integrated concept that involves all human actions down to the local levels. It aims to improve the quality of life of both current and future generations while safeguarding the heart's capacity to support life in all its diversity. It is also based on democracy, on rule of law, respect for fundamental rights, including freedom, equal opportunities, and cultural diversity. It promotes high levels of employment in an economy where in an economy whose strength is based on education, innovation, social and territorial cohesion, and the protection of human health and the environment. So if you see the graph, the charts that I've just produced, development outcome is such that there is a hope. And it is expected that once government tries to institute and to perform their actions, a ball that you see must roll from the government actions and the benefits must accrue to the people at the bottom. So with countries that have well-designed policies, they are supposed to leverage their own and external resources to produce human development outcomes. However, while this plan ensures that once the ball is set rolling, it gets down and the benefit accrues to everybody. But we realize that in reality, there are always gaps between this hope and the reality. And rather than having a straight plank, what we have is a plank that is wobbled like this, because there are many weak links in implementation, and much need to come together to make services work and produce desirable outcome. For example, that I've used here, if you say primary education, which state government tries to produce at top, by the time the funds and implementation for the mentors gets to the ministries, departments, and agencies, you already have some breakage, and which can be leakages of fund. By the time it leaves the MDAs to get to the provider, you also have some dysfunctionalities, which could be inappropriate spending, e.g. spending more on art, teacher salaries, textbook, not spending on specific things that are important. By the time it gets to the providers, which are the schools itself, you may find out that the teacher may not be teaching well, there could be low quality instruction, and the students who are supposed to benefit may not even be going to school. So while we think that development outcomes must, the ball should roll from top to the end in a seamless way, in reality, it does not happen. What happened is that there are so many dysfunctionalities in the process. And that is why if all these activities, if these all actions involves resources that have to be used, then there must be monitoring. We must be able to ensure that what is provided gets to those that it is being provided for. We must ensure that the difference between what is hoped for and the reality of what is got is the same, or at least minimized. That's why we need to monitor. This involves activities of following allocation and usage of resources, whether it's physical, material, or financial resources, and assessing the achievement of these resources. These resources, are they being put into use into what we said we would put them into use? Are there deviations that we can find? And we then need to facilitate decision making on the continuation of the policy program or projects that that is involved. So monitoring is a very, very important. What exactly do we mean when we say monitoring? We mean that we are looking for a continuous process of tracking the progress of a program, project, or policy, and it builds on data collected to improve the implementation management and day-to-day decision-making of policies or projects. There is a logical framework that monitoring follows, and that includes inputs. We must be able to monitor the inputs. We must be able to monitor the activities. We must be able to monitor the outputs, and we must be able to monitor the outcomes as well as the national goals or the impact of that particular program. Generally, it indicates whether the activities that we are doing is in the right direction or in the right place. And this is important if the hope of development must become reality to the people that they are being planned for. At the end of the day, once we have activities that are programs or projects, then we must evaluate. While monitoring is done on a day-to-day basis, evaluation is a periodic and objective assessment of planned, ongoing, and completed policies. They are used to answer specific questions related to the design, implementation, or outcomes of policies and programs. And unlike monitoring, which is a continuous process, evaluation are periodic and they are carried out at a particular point in time. At times, you have end of program evaluation, we have midterm evaluation, we have quarterly evaluation, while monitoring is continuous. And evaluation makes it possible to assess the efficiency and effectiveness, impact, relevance, and sustainability policies and programs. So when we have this sustainable development, and it is what we are targeting, it is important then for us to monitor and also to evaluate. If we look at the sustainable development agenda as we have it now, it has gone through a lot of process. This year makes the 58th year where we have what I will call the initial process that gets us thinking about moving to where we are now, which is the United Nations Conference on Human Environment Conference, which held in Stockholm. And at the end of the day, the idea was that we need to protect the environment. Because if we continue to have economic growth without taking into consideration the environment, it is going to be bad for us. Because at the end of the day, the carrying capacity of the world may be challenged. And that's why we have in 1987 a common future, and which led to the definition of sustainable development that I had at the end of earlier on. And then the conference on Agenda 21, which is also important for environmental issues. And by 2000, it was found that many development countries were lagging behind in the process of development. And so a Millennium Development Goal was initiated, which was supposed to last for 15 years, from 2000 to 2015. The idea was to make poverty history and to make sure that countries that are lagging behind are able to move forward. At the end of the day, we found out that after the 15 years, many of the countries did not achieve the objectives that were set for them. But within them, we already had the Rio Plus 10 conference, and we already have Rio Plus 20. But let us note that in Nigeria, when we had the 2000 Millennium Development Goals, by the year 2005, 2006, thereabout, Nigeria was already faced with what we call the debt overhang. And the government of the day at that time sought for a debt relief from the Paris Law. One of the conditions of the Paris Club debt relief was the establishment of a special office to handle the Millennium Development Goal, which led to the establishment of the Office of the Special Advisor to the President on MDGs, as is come to know at that particular point in time. And at the end of the day, by 2015, when the Millennium Development Goal, when the Millennium Development Goals ended, there was a new goal which led us to what we have now, which is the Sustainable Development Goals. And the Sustainable Development Goals is what we are implementing today. By year 2019, about 3 years ago, we launched what they call the Decade of Action, to say that unlike what happened with the Millennium Development Goal, when most of the goals were not achieved, it is important to then rewire ourselves and to relaunch a decade, because it remains 10 years. 5 years are already gone, and 2020 to 2030 must be used specifically in making more progress and deepening what is done on SDG. But unfortunately, man proposes, God disposes. We were faced with COVID came. But I think now that COVID is gone, although we have the Ukrainian war, we must start building back forward. So what exactly is it about these sustainable development goals? And why is it important? It is important because of what it sought to achieve. It is based on what we call the 5 Ps. That is, it focuses on the people, to end poverty and hunger in all forms and ensure dignity and equality. And also on prosperity to make sure that people are prosperous and are fulfilling lives in harmony with nature. It also strives to foster peaceful, just, and inclusive societies, and also protect our planet's natural resources. All these things will be done within partnership. The implementation period, just like the MDG, was also 15 years. It's also 15 years, and it's supposed to end by December 31, 2030. The implication is that we have just about 8.5 years to go. But what is important is that it's broad-based with about 17 goals, 169 targets, and 230 indicators. One of the slogans of the Sustainable Development Goals, these 17 goals that is being portrayed, is the idea that no one must be left behind in the development process, and that no one must be left behind from benefiting from the development that exists in their society and in their countries. And it also follows the three tripods of sustainability framework that I mentioned earlier on, which has to do with social sustainability, economic sustainability, as well as environmental sustainability. About 6 goals were specifically targeted at economic sustainability in terms of social sustainability, in terms of poverty reduction, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, as well as clean water and sanitation. While another 6 goals were also targeted at economic sustainability. 3 were targeted at environmental sustainability, and the last 2 goals, goals 16 and 17, were seen as means of implementation to ensure that countries have development that is sustainable. So if you look at these 17 goals and look at what they sought to achieve, we will realize that the cardinal issues of development have always been the same, and it is the implementation that is important for us to follow. So the 2030 agenda has its own basic vision, and it's a vision that is reflected in the declaration of the 2030 agenda. It is this shared vision. The shared vision says that there must be comprehensive economic, social, and environmental pillar, which are the 3 aspects of sustainability. For then, this must also include governance. These are divided into 17 goals, and all the goals, each of these goals are interrelated. They are integrated. They are related. And it's such that once you achieve one, you are also able to achieve some other. So if you don't achieve one, then you cannot be said to be successful in all the others. So they are holistic and integrated. And it is done in such a way that it must be inclusive, with no one left behind. And all development stakeholders must also be involved. That's the idea. At the end of the day, we must be able to measure what is being done. If we say this is the goal, after 15 years, in year 2030, we must be able to tell ourselves whether we have results or not. And even before we get to that 2030, there have been periodic evaluation, periodic monitoring to make sure that we achieve it. And that is done as we continue to implement. But this implementation is done by all the stakeholders, because global partnership is a major factor in means of implementation for the Sustainable Development Goal. And at the end of the day, we must be able to follow up and review the activities so that we are on track, so that we are able to achieve what we set for ourselves that we want to achieve. To be able to evaluate and ensure that we are able to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, there are actually 4 steps that are being followed. The first one is that if we want to evaluate any aspect of the SDG, we definitely need to identify the overall objective. Are we evaluating all the 17 goals together? Are we choosing priority goals, such like some of the voluntary national reports do? Are we choosing specific goal? Are we doing it for national? Are we doing it for subnational? So there must be overall objective of the evaluation so that it doesn't just go too big for us to handle. And as we do that, we must prepare for the SDG evaluation, which has to be participatory. It has to be participatory, and then identify policies and plans that will be evaluated. The next step is to use the 2030 agenda as the principle to inform criteria and questions. Because we have stated that the Agenda 2030 and SDG has not just 17 goals, but it also has 69 targets that we are looking forward to, as well as 230, and in some cases, 231 indicators that are used to measure them. And then we need to construct the logic and relate them to the individual country fundamentals, and then develop a cost and communication plan. So let's try and look at what has happened to Nigeria in terms of achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. This graph is drawn from the Sustainable Development Report 2022 that was released in June, and it has in it what we call the Sustainable Development Goal Index. That index was done for all the countries of the world. So I've brought out the African countries. If we look at this index, it is measured from 0 to 1 to show the progress that is being made towards achieving the SDGs. Once you are, the closer you are to 100, the better for you. The closer to 0, the better. If we look at African countries, the best performing country in Africa only achieved 68% progress in the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goal, and that's Mauritius. And in addition to that, we also have, following that, is South Africa and Ghana. Those are the three countries that have achieved 63% and above. But we also have countries that are not doing so well, but they are also progressing, including Sudan, 39%. In the case of Nigeria, as at 2021 index, has only been able to make 54.2% progress towards achieving the SDGs. So if we recall that we have about 8.5 years to go, then it means we need to deepen our activities, deepen our program, deepen what we do to be able to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. But some people might be looking and say, 54.2, that's low, that's more. Some countries are 68. In fact, in the global one, there are countries that are approaching 90%. Why is Nigeria approaching 54.2? That's the current status. But that 54.2 also has history. It's history in the sense that if we look at the performance of Nigeria, given the same indicators, in the last 21 years, you will find out that we have more. In 2000, the index was actually 48%. 48%, and it has moved progressively, increasing with some perturbations in years like 2009, 2016, but it has increased over the years to 54.2. Not rapid, it is a slow progress, but it is steady progress. And that tells us that we continue to move. And if the policies of government and the actors of government are able to deepen their activities, their policies, their program, there is possibility for the country to move better and higher than that. That also takes us. So although it is 54.2 for all the goals, it is important to see where are we making good progress and where we need to double our efforts in terms of making progress. If this graph shows the progress of Nigeria in that 2021 by different goals, and we find out that while we have made appreciable progress in Goal 13, climate action, and Goal 12, which is responsible consumption and production, more activity and actions need to be taken, especially as it concerns Goal 11, as it concerns Goal 3, which has to do with quality air, and Goal 9, because all these ones are below 50%. In fact, we have about 10 of the 17 goals for which the country has achieved less than 50% progress. So these are some of the issues that we need to look at and then see how we move. And these are the different achievements for each of the goals. The average index score is 54.2, but we know that for Goal 1, which is poverty, we have only made a 34% increase. For Goal 3, which is air, we have only made about 31% increase. For Goal 11, which is sustainable cities, we have also made only about 26% progress. So these are some of the things that we need to look at, and we need to compare that with where we are coming from. If you see where we are coming from, in 2015, the SDG score was 52.6. We have made only marginal progress because it's just 54.2 now. While most of the goals have not seen appreciable progresses, except goal 6, which is on water and sanitation, where we have only about 4% percentage point increase. We've also had, in some areas, we have had a reduction. For example, in terms of goal 8, we've seen this level of reduction, and we've also seen reduction in terms of goal 16, which has to do with peace, justice, peace and justice. So this is the situation of Nigeria. This is the achievement of the SDGs in Nigeria. So I picked them one by one and I said, let's interrogate them more. Goal 1 talks about ending poverty. And this is a poverty map for Nigeria. The definition of poor, this map is defined by the National Bureau of Statistics based on the 2019-2020 survey. And that survey says that everybody that is consuming less than 11,452 per month or 137,000 naira annually is regarded as poor. The implication is that if you are consuming 12,000 naira in a month, you are not poor by this definition. If you are consuming 15,000 naira per month, you are not poor by this definition. Even as low as some of us might be thinking that the figures are, you find out that in a state like Sokoto State, more than 87% are still living below the poverty line. In Taraba State, more than 87% are still living below the poverty line. In Niger State, about 66% are living below the poverty line. And these are areas that calls for action. And for human development, you see the pupil teacher ratio. The number of teachers are low in Nigeria, only 31 pupil to 38 teachers. And this masks a lot of things because in some rural areas, it could be as high as 1 teacher to 100 students. So these are areas that needs to be looked at. One of the biggest factors in Nigeria today has to do with unemployment and underemployment. It's a big elephant in the room that needs to be solved if most of the goal of the SDGs has to be achieved. As a country, nationally, 27.1% are unemployed, while 28.6% are underemployed. If you mark the two, it tells us that 55% of Nigeria are either unemployed or underemployed. And you have some countries where they are as high as 73%, just like Imo State and Kaduna State. Even states that we think have low unemployment and underemployment rate, like Anambra, 13.1 unemployment, 17.0 underemployment. That's 30%. It means that 1 out of 3 Anambra people who should be working are either unemployed or underemployed. This calls for action if we want to achieve the sustainable development, development goals. And it's based on the fact that on the last graph, we tried to make a computation in one of our studies that we did in the past to say how many people need employment. And 44,706,620 Nigerians are desperately looking for a decent job. That tells us that this goes beyond individual. This goes beyond person. This goes beyond government. It is not possible for government to provide 44 million jobs, but it is possible for government to create an enabling environment that will allow private sector, entrepreneurs, intrapreneurs to be able to provide these 44 million jobs. So we need to start thinking outside the box. So what are the different phases that we have had in the process of achieving the 2030 agenda? According to the OSA, let me acknowledge that there is an office that is in charge of making sure that the 2030 agenda and the sustainable development goals are achieved in the country. The Office of the Senior Special Advisor to the President on Health Teachings, and they have identified these 3 phases as what is going to be used. And based on some of the things that I've read and seen, and I think they are actually following these processes religiously to make sure that Nigeria achieve the Sustainable Development Goal. That's year 2030, as it has been stated. There are about 10 items that were stated in their operational framework, which include implementing a coherent national SDG plan, design and implementing the integrated national financing framework to operationalize the Addis Ababa action agenda for financing development. And for those of us who followed the last United Nations General Assembly, we realized that this particular document was actually launched and discussed at the UNG that aired in September in New York. And they have all these 10 activities that they have slated for themselves to be able to do. Many efforts have been followed, and I tried to summarize some of the efforts that OSAP has followed in my own view over the years, which include influencing policy evaluation, both within government and by others outside government. And there are different thematic groups that have been organized by the office, including the one for development partner, for civil societies, for academia, and for so many other places. The SDG implementation plan for 2020-30 to 2030 was also produced and it's being followed. And one of the key highlights and the most important thing for me from that document is the ability of the document to make it aligned to the national plan of the country. So the alignment of the national planning, the Nigerian National Development Plan, with implementation plan is also key, which means that whether it is SDG or the National Economy Plan, everybody is looking at the same goal, and everybody is working together to make sure that Nigeria is able to achieve its developmental objectives. And because once you have a target, you must measure your progress and you must monitor it. That's why it is important to have the national statistical system, which is being aligned with what is being done by the Sustainable Development Goal Office. Nigeria has also developed its own goal integrated Sustainable Development Goal, as well as have periodic review, national review of the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goal. This is one area of ensuring that and checking whether we are actually following, whether we are actually making progress in what we say we want to do. I have about 2 slides on that later on, especially this one on voluntary national report. The voluntary national report is a process through which countries stress and present national progress made in implementing the 2030 agenda, including achieving the 17th Sustainable Development Goal. And if we look at the quotes of Amina Mohammed that are put here, he said that with 177 countries having presented at least one voluntary national report to date, it's a testament that many governments are committed to the implementation of the 2030 agenda. And at the end of the day, ultimately, according to Amina Mohammed, the VNR creates space for government and their partners to identify what is needed to keep the promise of the SDGs. Nigeria is one of the countries that have produced 2 reports. One of the 4 countries that have presented is 2 voluntary national reviews in 2017 and in 2020. The objective of the voluntary national review for the SDG in Nigeria is to review implementation, to help accelerate, and to make sure that they identify gaps as well as good practices, and then mobilize all the partners to be involved in the development process and also benefit from the development outcomes in the country. While the 2017 Voluntary National Review outlined institutional dimensions for creating enabling policy environment and implementation of SDGs, the 2020 VNR focuses on key issues of poverty, health and well-being, education, gender equality, as well as enabling environment for peace and security and partnership. These are the 2 voluntary national reviews that Nigeria had made, and I'm sure and the documents are on the internet, and they show the great promise on what Nigeria is doing and what Nigeria is capable to do. But there's always the challenge of errors. In 2020, it was estimated that about 332 billion will be needed to achieve the SDGs. And that's why the Integrated National Financing Framework which tries to mobilize funds both internally and externally, is very important. And the INS particularly aligns itself with the policy objectives of the country as they are detailed in the National Development Plan, the one that was launched last year, 2021 to 2025, and the 2021 National Poverty Reduction and Growth Strategy, and also embedded in the 2020 to 2030 implementation framework of the Sustainable Development Goal published by the OSAP office. All these things, if they are integrated together and they are implemented together, can ensure that at the end of the day, Nigeria will be able to achieve its objectives of sustainable development. And we need to continue to monitor. There is value in timely, current, and accurate and complete data. To be able to know whether we are following, whether we're on the right path, we need to strengthen the data collection, management, dissemination, and capture. And I'm sure, given the activity that is going on in the alignment of the Nigerian statistical system and the National Statistical Act, I'm sure some of the points that have been made here can be really achieved. So we need to mobilize. Mobilize globally. We need to mobilize the people to action. We need to also mobilize locally. At the end of the day, if we want to build better forward, and as it's been shown in the Sustainable Development Report 2022, there are 6 SDG transformations that we need to focus more on specifically, and those are the transformations that are needed to achieve the SDGs. The first one is education, gender, and equality. The second is health, well-being, and demography. The third is energy, decarbonization, and sustainable industry, followed by sustainable food, land, water, and oceans, sustainable cities and communities. And at the end of the day, there's no economy that can develop today if it does not make conscious effort to harness the digital revolution and make it available for sustainable development. So let's mobilize ourselves and thank SDSN for making this mobilization, for reminding us that we need to continue to talk about it, for trying to say that there are risks in leaving some people behind, and that all stakeholders must collectively take action. They must also individually take action, and they must make sure that their action coincide with the actions that are taken globally and regionally. This demand to achieve sustainable development is urgent, although it is ambitious, but then at the end of the day, we must make sure that we achieve the sustainable development. Let us realize that SDG is also political, more than technocratic. Government support is important. Government drive is important. The SDG will go nowhere if political undertone is not given into it. And for a country like Nigeria, that's a federation, it makes it a little bit also intriguing because activities at the state government are not specifically dictated at the federal government. So there is the need for state and local government to be involved, to be nurtured, and to be supported, to be able to achieve the level that we have in the achievement of SDGs as we have it at the national level. All of this will undoubtedly require increased investment in monitoring and evaluation so that we know where we are coming from, we know where we are, and we are able to determine and identify how to move forward in order to be able to achieve the main objectives. We will only be able to say that we will have achieved the SDGs if they are done within the framework of Nigeria's national ethics. I always want to remind everybody that our country, Nigeria, has some ethical issues. And despite the fact that our constitution states explicitly 7 ethical requirements for every citizen, no matter what we do to achieve our sustainable development goals, as long as we do not do them within the precepts of these 7 ethical requirements as stated in our constitution, the SDGs cannot be achieved. The national ethics include discipline, integrity, dignity of labor, social justice, religious tolerance, self-reliance, and patriotism. So This has to be achieved within the ethics. We can always be talking of discipline, we can always be talking of SDGs, but if we don't put all these things within it, it's going to be difficult for us to achieve the agenda that we have promised to set for ourselves. When SDGs was being formed, Ban Ki-moon, the Secretary General, then said, the SDG agenda is a promise by leaders to everybody. It's universal and integrated. It's an agenda that we must end poverty in all its form. An agenda for the planet, our common home. An agenda for shared prosperity, peace, and partnership. And it must be rooted in gender equality and respect for the rights of all. Above all, it pledges to leave no one behind. This is the mindset when the SDGs was formed. When we bring it to Nigeria, the mindset is that it must fall within the ethical values and ethical requirements of this country. And I believe that this is the only way we can achieve the sustainable development goal. I thank you very much for your attention. Thank you, and God bless.
Wow. Thank you so much, Prof. And I don't even know how to say this now, because you really loaded us with a great knowledge indeed as regards SDGs. And personally, I've always said I'll keep learning from you, because I always unlearn, relearn, and keep learning. The statistics which you've already showed us, and which is telling us on measuring the SDGs and how we can go about achieving the SDGs. This speaks volume a lot, and really appreciate every part of it so much. We have a lot of comments and questions from our participants on YouTube. I think we'll be starting from there. Definitely those who are the state reps that are on Zoom can also signify to ask your question. Kelechi, you'll be recognized when you want to start asking questions. But those of us on YouTube, please, I would love we drop our questions. We are going to attend to those who are on YouTube first. We have a question from Zabi. He said, my question one, after 2030, what would be next towards continuing the process, considering those countries yet to achieve either of the goals? Then looking at the war between Russia and Ukraine, I'm trying to check between Russia and Ukraine. There's a question he's trying to ask there, but he actually break it into two. Okay, what will be the effect of the world in achieving these goals globally?
Well, sorry, what was the first question? I remember the second one, but what's the first question?
His first question was, he said, after 2030, what will be the next step towards continuing the process, considering those countries yet to achieve either of the goals?
Okay. Let me answer it this way, because the question comes in a different way from the type of questions we used to answer in 2015, 2016. In 2015, 2016, people used to ask, some people ask the question this way: why are the imperialists imposing their objectives on us by ensuring that all of us must follow the same line of action? And my response is always this: let us pick the goals one by one, whether we have SDG or not. What had been identified as the 17 goals are what are important for any government. They are the reasons why we have the government in place in the first instance. Goal 1 says end poverty. Whether you have SDG or you don't have SDG, the Nigerian Constitution already says that security of life and property is a duty of government. And the basic answer to security of life in Nigeria is prosperity. So many countries do not actually need the SDGs to be able to achieve the SDGs, because it is part of the responsibility of government and governance. Goal 2 says end hunger. Ending hunger is a primary objective of government because it has to do with food security and food insecurity. And if the Constitution says that the objective is to ensure security, it then means the Constitution already gives you a mandate to end food insecurity. So 3 talks about health. So 4 talks about education. So in 2030, what the SDG has done is to identify and is to remind government and governance that you are expected to do this. Let us assist you in bringing it to the fore. So it is not because we have SDGs that we are talking about Goal 6 water and sanitation, for example, or that we are talking about Goal 10 inequality, for example, or Goal 13 in a climate action, for example, which is because they are the role of government. So whether the goal ends in 2030 or not, the role of government remains, which is to make sure that they build human capital, they ensure human rights and governance, they ensure that there is security of life and property, they ensure that people have prosperity. So the SDGs has only assisted us in fashioning out and grouping some of these items. So in 2030, whether SDG is achieved or not, the objective of government remains, and government must continue to ensure the prosperity of people. The second question is what?
The second question is regards the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine. I'm trying to.
Yeah, concerning the war against in Russia and Ukraine, the effects of Russian war is differential by country. It depends on how each country operates in the global economy, in the global value chain. Until recently, Nigeria is a country where whenever there is war, because we produce oil, Nigeria always have what we call a windfall. That was when there was Gulf War, Nigeria was able to reap windfall. Whenever there is a war that distorts the global value chain in the oil sector, because Nigeria produces oil, it has oil boom. Every oil boom, most of the oil boom in Nigeria are associated with this insecurity in the world. However, this is the first time in the history of Nigeria when there will be a war and every other oil-producing country is enjoying boom. In fact, all oil-producing countries are enjoying boom except Nigeria. And the reasons why Nigeria is not enjoying the boom is not far-fetched. It's because we have not been able to produce our oil to the quota that we have. Many reasons have been adduced to it. Some people said that because there is oil theft, some people said it's due to insecurity and so many others. But what is important is that the reasons why we are not benefiting from why the Ukrainian war is affecting us negatively is because we have not been able to do the needful with our oil sector. If we are, this Ukrainian war should have been a benefit to Nigeria, and we should be running everywhere and telling everybody about the amount of oil boom that we have been able to generate as a result of the war. Unfortunately, we are where we are because we have not been able to exploit our own internal activities, internal governance system that will ensure that we benefit from oil export, oil foreign exchange earnings, and the war that goes on in Ukraine. Hello, I finished. Oh, I think Emmanuel is off. Is there any other person who can take over from him? Maybe his network has gone. Okay, if there's no one, let me start calling then. I can see Cross River, Kechi Matthew. If Kechi Matthew can just ask the question or mute and ask the question, Sir Oma.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Hello. Yeah, good morning. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, my name is
Yes, we can.
Kima from Cross River State Village. I wish the special advisor on SDG would be the one that I ask this question. We have 36 offices across the nation, and to achieve this, we see policies are just, sometimes we make policies in our ACs without taking the people we are making policies along. What mechanism or structure have we put on ground in order to achieve this SDG? Now somebody will be in Calabar there, special advisor on SDG. How do we reach this kind of people? Now, how open are they for this project to be executed in order for us to take this message to the rural areas? Because sometimes I see more of politics in everything we are doing in this country. If maybe finances or something has been allocated for us to achieve one goal or the other, there's it, like in Obaliku, where I came from. If you go to places, there are some places you trek by 4, 5 hours, 6 hours, and those places, the schools are not there. Even if you see one, everything is dilapidated. Now, if you want to even engage a commissioner for education, or you go to this SDG office, they will tell you this person is not available and all of that. What do we do? What policies have we put on ground, even in connection with the State House of Assembly, to mandate these offices to be functional in order for us to achieve this goal that we are talking? Then my second question, now we are talking about 2030. And I see this program is just 3 months or something. What happened with all of those days after this program? Now, what do we have at the back of our mind to sustain this program? And now the people who are willing to take this message to the grassroots, what do we have? What do we have to boost their morale in order to do effective work? Thank you.
Okay, sir, thank you very much for the question. And thank you for also starting your question by acknowledging my limitation. Since I do not work for OSAP office, I'm just a lecturer at the University of Ibadan. But let me state this, that the implementation of some of the SDGs do not actually rest at the federal government. They rest at the state governments. For example, the example that you gave us, which is about schools, about teachers not being there, about the dilapidated building, fall squarely on the table of the state governments. The federal government does not have any secondary school or primary school apart from unity school that they set up for. So by mandate, it tells us the level of issues that we have to deal with at a different governance level. So we need to identify the issues that should be dealt with at the federal government level and those that should be dealt with at the state government level. I don't know whether there is a meeting between the OSAP federal and the OSAP at the state level. Some of these things can actually also be discussed with them. But let's understand a fact from my perception. And my understanding is that the Office of the Special Advisor to the President on SDG is a coordinating office. It is not essentially an implementing office. It coordinates agencies, identify where issues are that should be solved, and then point direction to say that there's a problem with health in this area. Ministry of Health, you can go and implement it. And then if there are priority projects that can then be used to support the Ministry of Health, it can then be done. I think this is also the area that states should also go. The SDG office should only be a coordinating agency, such that it's able to identify where problems are and then identify the MDAs that is supposed to be in charge. And when those activities appears too much for that MDA, then one or two priority investments can then be made from the special advisor's office to complement what is done at the different MDAs. That's what I think should be done. Then the issue of whether this program is supposed to be 3 days or more, I think Emmanuel will be able to answer that as one of the organizers. I've just been invited to make presentation. Emmanuel, the
Yes,
question
sir.
is, why is the program 3 days?
The program 3
days.
3 months. 3 months.
Oh, 3 months. Okay.
Okay. Well, for the program, just like the program guide, just as been explained on the program guide, definitely, we can't go beyond 3 months. There are a lot of programs like this that span for 6 months, a year, but it's very due for us to have an intense training whereby you get sufficient knowledge about SDGs, and before you can go out to get to advocate or get to implement what you've learned here. Like I mentioned earlier, what Prof just taught us today is something that it takes for like 3 months and even more than like a whole session. And it's really helping us. And I know that it's been an insightful one indeed. So it's due. Each of the programs for SDSN is always within, most especially the long-term one, within 3 months, whereby you have a series of masterclass sessions before you go further to the community project.
I think there are 3 other hands up.
Yes, sir. I just want to quickly mention their names so that they can briefly ask their questions. We have Sandra from FCT, the representative for FCT, then also Adeniji from Kano. Please, just in 30 seconds, kindly ask your question.
Good morning. Thank you, Prof, for the presentation.
Good morning, ma'am.
Yes, sir. My question is from goal 1, one of the indicators for the poverty line. Can you hear me?
Yeah, speak on.
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you. I said one of the indicators for the poverty line on the Sustainable Development Report is actually $1.90. And you mentioned that if you earn up to 12,000 naira in Nigeria, you are not poor. I just want clarity on that. Are you using that indicator something else as so poverty line in Nigeria?
Okay, all right, that's awesome. Please, Adeniji from Kano State, kindly ask your question in 30 seconds so that Prof can attend to this once and for all.
Good morning, sir. My question is based on the way the Nigerian society is, especially in terms of religious aspects. Looking at this gender equality, sir, do you think we can achieve it? Or maybe we say, okay, if some part of the country can achieve it to some extent, then we are good to go. Then my second question is, you said if somebody is earning 11K a month, it means the person is not poor. So please, considering the human resources, natural resources, and everything we have in Nigeria, should we be based on that particular amount or not more? Thank you, sir.
All right, sir. Hello, Prof.
Do you want me to answer those two questions now?
Yes, sir. Except
Okay.
just that we have. Okay, I will appreciate you answer the two questions, sir, before the Niger State Rep asks his question.
Okay. So I have two questions, and the two questions are related. Let me start from the related one. The related one is that why do you use a different poverty line? I have not used a different poverty line. The mindset of the SDG is to put the goals broadly. And in the framing of the targets and the indicators, there are suggestions on what the poverty line should be. However, different countries are also expected to define their own peculiarities and define their own poverty line. While the international poverty line gets an average for everybody in the world, but we know that at times the poverty line that will work in Nairobi, Kenya, may not work in Jakarta, Indonesia, and may not work in Lagos, Nigeria. That's why different countries also have their own poverty line. The poverty line that I have chosen, I chose it because that is the Nigerian national poverty line as defined by the National Bureau of Statistics, not by me, not by my research. And the National Bureau of Statistics mandate is to get the poverty profile of the country every 5 years. The last one that was done, that is their own calculation of the poverty line. Whether that amount is low or high, I'm sure they will be able to provide answers. But I am aware that the poverty line is defined based on the basket of consumption that people consume in different areas. And as at 2019-2020, it was assumed that once you have that about 11,400 naira per month, people will be able to survive. So that's the idea. So I'm not the originator of the poverty line. So which poverty line would I rather use? The international one of $1 each or the Nigerian one? I would prefer to use the one that is approved by Nigeria and calculated by the Nigerian organization in charge of that particular activity. For the second question, which has to do with gender inequality, and to say that given the religious situation, do I think that we can ever achieve gender equality in Nigeria? It depends on what we mean by gender equality. We also find out that in some of the states that we think the religion do not approve of a particular gender, we have seen ministers come from those states that are of female gender. We have seen people become head of government or head of status from that government. So it depends on the approach that we have followed, and it depends on how we intend to follow it. I still think that it's a goal that we can be achieved as long as we put it in the front burner, that gender equality is a target that we are looking at. I'm sure that at some point in time we will achieve it.
Yeah, thank you very much, Prof, for that wonderful response, sir. We just have one more person asking a question. That's the Niger State Rep. Please kindly unmute your mic and ask your question. Trying to confirm if you have questions on YouTube as well. Okay, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you so much. I guess I'm heard.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, okay.
All right. So my question was actually in a similar fashion to what the Kano State Advocate have asked about gender inequality, but you have clarified on that also. So I would just want to ask if there is any agency, so in the course of our field project education, if we have come in contact of such situation where there is a particular region where the girl child education is strongly prohibited or selectively not attained due to religious or cultural factors. Could there be any agency with which we can file in a report to address such issues?
Yes, sir, Prof. I think that's the last question.
I don't really get the question, but let me tell you what I think I got there is to say that is there any area, is there any agency that we can report to if there is an infraction against the female gender? That's what I think the question is all about. Am I correct, sir, Mr. Casey?
Yes, sir, that's accurate.
It depends on the states. For many states, they have what they call the Child Rights Act. And the Child Rights Act for most of the states detail exactly what can be done and what cannot be done. We also need to understand that the issue of child rights and definition of child differ from state to state. And even in the Constitution, the Nigerian Constitution says that any married woman is no longer a child. That's what the Nigerian Constitution says. Even if that married woman is 15-year old. I know there are advocates, there are NGOs that are working to change that and have a specific age for that. But I'm sure in different states, they have agencies where you can discuss infraction. Anyway, even if those states, if you don't have those agencies, there are so many agencies within the country that are working in the area of rights, justice, governance, and some of these NGOs are always willing to take it up to the appropriate authorities.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much, Prof. And we really appreciate the time you spent with us this morning. Really appreciate the teaching. Yeah, we just have to keep, and please, guys, I will advise you watch and rewatch this video. And the slides are available. I mean, the presentation slides are already available on the learning resources. Check the Google Drive. The presentation slide for today is already available. And on behalf of SDSN Nigeria, I know probably you are part of the leadership council definitely, but we must appreciate you, sir. Really appreciate the time and considering your scripts and your engagement, despite that you still took time to be part of today's session. Thank you for the teachings indeed. And I would also like to confirm on behalf of our advocates, because definitely they would like to connect with you, to learn with it from you. Which of the platforms do you prefer, or how will you prefer they reach out to you, sir?
By Yahoo Mail is better.
All right, sir. All right, sir. So the admin will share the Yahoo Mail address of Prof with each and everyone. And we would like to also appreciate, before you came in, we had Dr. Bala. He was able to join today's session, and you know, it's been a long request for like many months, and luckily we're able to have him on board today too. And like I mentioned, we are so grateful to having you this morning. So thank you so much for the teaching and the knowledge passed across to us. And we are promising that we are going to make good use of it and definitely try as much as possible to teach others and impact other people too. Thank you so much. We look forward to having you more and more. You can take the lead for today, because I know definitely you have one or two things to also attend to.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, and I thank everyone for the attention and for the question. Best wishes.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. So quickly, I would like to address one or two things as regards the other phase of the program. Okay, Mr. Kelechi, I'm still going to call you. Please just hold on. And there's a need for us to give a yes or no answer, because the design of this program is for us to have 2 masterclass sessions each week, and we've missed 2 actually. And normally we are supposed to end the masterclass session are supposed to end today, but we still have 2 topics to cover. So I'm going to ask, because we can't leave it behind without it. Based on your decision, we respect each and everyone's decision, and based on what you would like to do as regards that. Would you like to have the 2 sessions next week, Friday, or we should just put an end to the masterclass session today? The 2 sessions are, I think the first one is on circular economy, responsible production and consumption. The second one is climate change and green economy. Yeah, climate change, renewable energy, and green economy. You like to, I just need a yes or no, a yes. I would have loved to draw a poll whereby we can know how many people are saying yes or how many people are saying no. So please, those of us on YouTube, you can try as much as possible to follow up with the poll. And those of us on Zoom, the representatives on Zoom, you can just use the comment section to say yes or no. Please, I would love to quickly do that. We like to have the masterclass session, or we should just share the slides. You know, we don't like a situation whereby we are sharing the slide and the facilitators are not just speaking. We also want a live session with each and everyone. Should we have it next week Friday, or we should call it? All right, I can see yes from okay, I think I can see 3 years on Zoom. All right, that's fine. I think I'm seeing yes. I'm waiting to see no. All right, that's fine. Okay, based on those of us on YouTube, please let's participate in this. It's very important. We respect each and everyone's decision. Yeah, it's a sacrifice we all have to make, even the facilitators, not to talk about the participants, and not to talk about the admin team, those who are working behind the scenes. And I really want to appreciate each and every team, each and every member of the organizing team of the SDGs Advocate Programme, from the inception of the program, even from the pre-planning phase of the program till now, for the excellent work you guys have been doing. So those of us on YouTube, I think a poll has just been dropped. Can you just say yes or no? Yes or no, then we know. So what moves to the next part of the information session? Just like we've been grouped per state, we're also going to be grouped per SDG. What do I mean by that? We have people that are basically working on maybe quality education, and we also have people that are mainly focusing on climate action. It's due we connect, it's due we share knowledge with each other, whereby you can know those who are working aligned with your own projects. Definitely, there are a lot of benefits, and what we are also trying to do from there is to see how we can, based on the structure of the program, what has been structured out is to have a mentor per SDG. So for those who are working on quality education, or maybe for those who are working on Go 1, or for those who are working on Go 3, definitely at the end of the program, we are going to be having a mentor that you are going to connect with. And these are industry leaders that are working, that have done excellently well, and they've passed through different phases of life, and they know what it takes to be let me say, SDG champion or change maker indeed. The attendance link is going to be shared. Please admit him. Can you share the attendance link with those on YouTube? I think it has been shared on Zoom. They are going to share the attendance link with us. Please let's just hold on. Yeah, regarding the SDG grouping, we are going to be grouped, and the structure is just like we have the PDF from which entails all the 36 states and also FCT. We are going to have the groups from Go 1 to Go 17. Please, you are just meant to join the particular group. I know some of us have projects that is interlinked to another goal. Yeah, you have primary goal. Join the group in which is your primary goal. Forget about maybe your own major goal is climate action. Definitely, you can still relate it to quality education and some other, and also some other goals indeed. But the major group you have to join is the climate action group. That's Go 13 group. So, and also like to mention that there is a deadline for on a school submission form. A link has been shared with us. Let's try as much as possible to, we are actually going to discuss more on that regarding the on a school projects. Based on what the organization has structured out, we are all to select a school. And the reason why they said that 5-kilometer radius from your existing locale is because they've considered that, okay, accessibility is very important at no cost, in as much as you can get a school that is 5 kilometers. But if you feel like the school I want to work with, like some of us already know someone maybe in the school, and you feel like, oh, the school is very far away from me, yeah, that's fine. You can still exist 5 kilometers, but for the sake of expensive and accessibility, that's why the design is 5-kilometer radius from your current location. Then, the deadline is 14th of October, latest by 14th of October. We are all to submit the information of the school we intend working with. And you are meant to submit the information of the school before you are going to receive your introduction letter. Because at the point whereby each and everyone has submitted their school information, they are still going to review to approve if you can go ahead with that school or not. Yeah, they are still going to do that. And on the On a School project, it's designed in such a way that you have materials in which even if you open that material on your device and you are reading it to the student, definitely they will understand. Not to talk about the knowledge which you've acquired, which you've had within the previous 5 weeks. Definitely, these are things which you can use to impact the students, and it has to be very practical and engaging. You might not need to print anything because I think earlier I got some calls and questions from some of the advocates asking that, are we going to print? And we are not asking you to print the whole manner which was sent to you. No, we are not asking you to print it. And this is even a digital world. These students are students that many of them have a device. You can start your own community of mentees. You can have your mentees from there. You can create your platform from there. I remember some years back, like in 2022, when we had the project for secondary schools in Oyo State, we had a community from different 20 schools, and we brought them. We create a community for all of them, and from there they established their SDG club across the school, and they are able to work further on various innovations achieving the SDGs. So the deadline for On a School submission is 14th of October, and also the deadline for state proposal is 28th of October. Then regarding the assessments, there is an extension regarding the assessments and completion of SDG academic courses. The completion of SDG academic of October compared to the former date that we have it before. Then for assessments will be coming up on 22nd of October. So please, let's try as much as possible to take note of these dates. Like we mentioned, we're going to have one more masterclass session, which is going to be next week, 14th. I think that should be 14th of October. And it's going to be on two things: circular economy, responsible production and consumption. And the other part is green economy and renewable energy and the climate aspects. So I would just like to quickly give room for each, those of us on YouTube. Okay, I think I can see 69% of people on YouTube saying yes, that we can have the masterclass session for next week. Yeah, I believe it's been a wonderful time indeed. Those of us on YouTube, please, in case you have any question or you want clarification on anything, kindly use the comment section to drop your question. The attendance is already pinned on yeah, I can see it. The attendance link is there as well. Let's endeavor to fill the attendance and give the necessary evaluation and feedback. So those of us on Zoom, please, you can just unmute your mic. Kindly signify unmute your mic and ask your question. Let's try as much as possible to make it very brief, so that before 11:40 we can end today's call. I thought we were going to finish by 11:30 actually, but that's fine. Mr. Matthew, you can unmute your mic and ask your question, please. Okay, the representative from Plateau State, can you unmute your mic and ask your question?
Okay, good morning. My name is Juan Santana, and I'm representing Plateau State. And I want to first of all say thank you for all you guys are doing.
Please, kindly try as much as possible to be audible.
Okay. Can me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, so I said I am Thompson and I appreciate the SDSN for what they've been doing for us. And the question I have is, one of my participants actually asked that he's moving locations, and he's seeing that it may affect him. He's not going to be in my state anymore. He's going to a different state. And he's asking if his project he can still do the project in that place he's going to. So that is the question I have to ask.
Okay, all right, that's fine. In as much as he's changing location at that particular time, if he has already changed location as we speak, he should join the new state in which he's going to. Yeah, then you can exit your page, your state, so that there won't be duplication. Yeah. I think I've answered your question.
Yes, thank you very much.
All right. All right, Mr. Kelechi, sorry, Kechi, I must not pronounce your name in English. So you can ask your question.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yes,
we can hear you. Speak on.
Just on the issue of somebody being in another state and also joining two groups, two states, linking two states in a group. What do you do about that?
Well, you know that we have people that
I'm in Cross River State now. I'm in Cross River State group. Then I'm also in FCT. What do you advise for such a person to do?
Well, if you are in Cross River State and you're also in FCT, definitely you have the major states which you are more engaged, and you have your own states which you know that your activity is very sure. You just have to join a single state. You have to join a single state.
Not participating in two states, right?
Yes, yes.
You have to exit one and link to one. One person, one state.
Right. Yes, absolutely. All right, thank you. So I have some questions on YouTube. Let me quickly respond to that while we come back on Zoom. Is there going to be a banner or hard copy of SDG material for students? I chatted with some staff and we plan to. Awesome. Yeah, that's good. You establishing the SDG club, just like the program structure has been. So regarding the banner and hard copies of the SDG materials, in as much as you are SDG advocates, it's important for you to have this. It's something that is something that's going to help you definitely, and it's not a single-use material. Whereby I remember I did a placard earlier in 2019, and I'm still using those 17 placards today. So, in as much as you're having a placard, you feel you need to have a placard, yeah, it's free. It's free. And if you're having a banner, definitely you have to consider that, okay, this is not just a single use, I'm using it for all other purposes. And, the advocacy projects or the community development projects, I believe, in as much as you participate in that, it won't be difficult for you to execute your own projects. So, which is even what we are looking forward to, whereby you can start your own innovation, you can come up with your own idea and start running your own projects on your own. So that is going to be sorted by you, and try as much as possible to be economical with that. Please, I also want to please can we get access to materials for student edition for the own a school project? So there are materials that we shared on the SDG advocacy resources. Please kindly check the platform and get materials from there, because we have a lot of there's a folder specifically SDG. You have to download that folder for your own personal use, even beyond you talking about the own school projects. All right, that's fine. I think that's all the questions we have on YouTube for now. All right, for those who are on Zoom, please kindly unmute your mic and ask your questions. Adeniji from Kano State, you can ask your questions.
Okay, thank you, sir. My question is, if we are to start the only school, are we to be going to the schools every day, or what was the my second question is, you said we should join the SDG that we know that we have interest in. We should not go for the one that maybe that we have in mind to. So like me personally now, based on the course I studied and everything, that's what I'm going for. But based on the environment I am, like I said last week, if you project in mind, if we can execute it regarding this homeless student, that they should be located into the public schools and everything for each SDG. So if I'm to choose now, I should choose one that has to do with the politics and forget the what.
Well, if I get your question rightfully, I think the answer to that question is you are still, you need to ask yourself, which of the goals am I really advocating for, or which, based on my innovation, based on my idea, based on my solution, which of the goals does it relate to? So you need to, from there you can know your primary goal of interest, and then you also have to join that particular group. That's the group you are going to join. Not we have a lot of people that did their undergraduate studies or postgraduate studies in agricultural science. But that doesn't mean now currently they do more on health, or they do more on industry innovations and infrastructure, and even maybe they speak more on gender equality, or their injuries around gender equality. And yeah, so that doesn't mean that you have to join the go-to group. You have to focus basically on your primary goal. And the second question, the first question which you asked, that is a very sensitive one. That are you going to be going there every day? No, no, sir. Based on what the management have designed, we are not meant to be going there every day. And definitely, in fact, you can't be going there every day. It's depending on your engagement, the kind of interaction you're able to have with the school management, but it's expected you go to the school once in a week. But if you have opportunity to go there more than once in a week, and okay, I won't say this, because it will look as if I'm trying to give a cheat code to the only school project. But still, you work with the school once in a week, if not twice. But definitely, you know what your schedule is like, and what how best you can easily achieve it. All right, I think I say we have a question from okay, let's have questions from Lagos State Rep Elizabeth. Then also Abbas, you can ask your question.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Okay, so I just want to, I want some clarification regarding the community project. Now, I have three questions. The first one, is it going to be running concurrently with the Own a School project? That's one. Secondly, are we splitting ourselves? Take, for example, Lagos, we have various local governments. So are we splitting ourselves according to our local government? Like, oh, if you have about, say, 2 people in a particular place on the island, okay, if this is a problem you see, this is what you want to work towards in your local government. Is that how the community project is supposed to be? And then thirdly, you made mention of it following the 17 goals, any one of the 17 goals. So in the local government, for example, if there's 2 problems that was take for example was seen, and then the statement of problem is about, say, 2 goals, is there a way that they could, if it's possible, work on those 2 problems? So that's just what I want clarifications on.
All right, thank you, Ms. Elizabeth. Regarding your question, I will just answer the second question. You mentioned island and mainland. So categorically, you can just divide into 2 for Lagos, and that doesn't mean you are not meant to do per local government. Yeah, you are not meant to do per local government. But the first thing you have to consider is the population sizes of your group. How many are your team members? Then secondly, you have to consider that, okay, what is the distance mail like? Like, how far are you from each other? Then another thing we also have to consider is what exactly are we working on? You mentioned earlier that if you are having a particular, maybe you identify a particular problem, for about you actually coming to you identify like multiple problems. Yeah, definitely it's fine. You can identify more than a problem, but you still have to have a primary goal, and that doesn't mean that you don't have all other goals which you are relating it to. So I think I've had some people that are saying they want to do trainings for a particular group of people, and definitely your primary goal is goal 4, but you can still relate this to goal 8, and you can still relate this to goal 9, depending on maybe it's a training on technology, tech, and that's tech enabled. Yeah, you can relate it to goal 8, you can relate it to goal 9, and these are things that it's interrelated. Yeah, it's very interrelated. And the first question you asked that, are you going to be doing your projects concurrently? Yeah, there's a plan regarding that. The planning goes concurrently. You know, we've given a 3 weeks interval based on what the program timeline is. We have from now to the end of the month to plan on the project which we want to do. Once we are done with the planning, we will submit our proposal. The management are going to review it. If they approve that proposal, then you can go ahead with your project. But the project has to be done before to a specific date. Your community development, your community projects might require you to do a kind of pre-sensitization, or you might just have to launch the project directly. Maybe that's just a one-time engagement. Yeah, your community projects can be a one-time engagement, but on a school project is not meant to be a one-time engagement, at least between 2 or 3 weeks, based on what the working guide, based on what we have on the working guide. I think I've answered your question.
Yes,
brother.
thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. So, Mr. Mohammed, you can unmute your mic and ask your question.
Hello, good morning, everyone. My question, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. My question is related to school projects. The question is that, apart from letter that we are going to submit it to the school, is there any identity that we can use in order to be fully recognized or accepted by that school? Then my second question is that, when we been accepted by the school like that, so we are going to ask the schools to set the club, SDGs club, like that. So after they set this, this club, are we only going to focus on that club, SDGs club, to be training that student within that SDGs club, like that? That's my question.
Are you going to only focus on the? Are you only going to focus on the SDGs club? Sorry, come again with that question.
Okay, I say, are we only going to focus on SDGs club? The student within that, are we going to only train that student that's been within this, SDG club, like that?
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Alman. Yeah, I got your question. Okay. So based on what you asked, you are connecting with these students and you are training them on SDGs. Definitely, it's just based on the structure of the program, because I don't want to say something outside what the management have decided. And you train them for 3 weeks, and after you train them for 3 weeks, you also need to let them know that the school management, when you're approaching them, that you also want to ensure that they are SDG club. We have some states that they currently have SDG clubs. Yeah, you don't need to bother yourself. That's fine. But you still have to run your training. And the first approach really matters. It doesn't mean that you need to have a particular ID card to show them that maybe you are running an advocate project with SDSN. Your appearance, I really want to mention that your appearance really matters. That will give the kind of audience, that will tell me the kind of audience which they are going to give to you when you get there. I promise this session is going to end by 11:40. I don't want to speak too much. So please let's try as much as possible to compose ourselves and present ourselves. Even though we definitely be going to different offices, definitely we are still going to follow up with the office of the senior special advisor to the president on SDGs, and they are going to release more information regarding the focal points across the states. So definitely you are going there to introduce that, okay, I'm an SDG advocate, and looking at it, your appearance, the approach when getting there really matters. So that's part of the what is going to determine the kind of audience which they are going to give you. So please, let's try as much as possible to also duly honor whoever we meet there. Even the security officer in the gatemen, they matter a lot. Definitely, the letter you are going with, when they see that letter, when they see the organization that writing on your behalf, they are going to give you the due regards, and they are going to attend to you based on what you've requested for. So I think you've attended to all questions and answers. If there is any other question, please kindly relate with your state rep, and we get to communicate further as regards all other activities. See you next week, Friday, by 9 a.m., 14th of October, for the last masterclass session. And I wish each and everyone a pleasant weekend. So, people are asking already regarding the school project. Please, the target for school project is secondary schools for now. Secondary schools for now. I don't know if there is an exception. If there is an exception, we are going to communicate that with you based on whatever the management decides. Thank you. Have a lovely weekend.